All right, Dad, it's just the issues. I banned you for a certain reason. Who cares? Let's move on, all right? Um, I want to say right off the top, I'm going to combine my response into one out of a couple of videos that you made. In one place you say, that's the great thing about Christianity. You can believe anything you want. The one you went to taught respect. The one I went to doesn't teach respect. Regardless of what the one you went to taught or what the one I go to teaches, Christianity at least is a defined set of values. You cannot believe that it's okay to kill somebody and still be a Christian. So no, Christianity is not beautiful in the fact that you can believe anything you want. Christianity is beautiful for a lot of other reasons, but not for that one. You talk about education, way back in the history, education, it wasn't necessary for government to mandate that all children be educated because we had, lower skilled jobs. But with the Industrial Revolution, you say evolution became necessary because we had more skilled jobs and people didn't have the education necessary to do those jobs, so the government stepped in and required people to educate their children to a certain level. Well, I think that argument is off a little bit, and again, we're just sticking to the basics. You want to go back in history, I think you need to go back a little bit further. You need to expand your view of history because in 5th century Greece, which is one of the most prosperous and most fruitful periods in all of world history, education was not compulsory. People had voluntary education, and education was largely market-based. People paid for education from these roaming teachers that went around teaching, and somehow they managed to produce, some of the best material, both in art and science and literature and philosophy, that has come, in recorded history. So when you think about history, I guess just maybe I look at history in a little bit broader view. And education did not become necessary because of the Industrial Revolution. The public school system became necessary. If you read the comments of those that highly agitated for the public school system because of their desire to control the content of what was being taught rather than the quality of what was being taught. You say that public education exists because if we're going to require with these higher skilled jobs and with the nationalized economy and now the global economy, we need to guarantee that all participants in that economy or all the students have the same level of education. That was a phrase you used in one of your videos. They're to give them the same level of education. And this is one of my favorite phrases. You quoted me on there. Are you serious? Are you serious, Data? Are you seriously going to tell me under the public school system that the kids on the south side of Chicago receive the same education as the people in Beverly Hills? I know in my experience the kids on the south side of Dallas don't get near the education or the quality of education that the kids in Highland Park do. You tell me public education guarantees a certain level of education? No. In fact, in public education, the differences are more stark than in other areas of education. In public education, the poor people are guaranteed to get the bad education, and the rich people are guaranteed to get a good education. Only in the private system do you sometimes find that a good education is within the grasp of the extremely poor, or the poor in general, or the middle class. Not in the public education system. The levels of education that the rich and poor receive are more disparate in the public education system by far. Then you say, well, I want all my money back. You go back to that tired argument and say, John, you don't just pay for your kid to go to school. You pay for all the kids to go to school. Well, Dada, in this system, you're exactly right. But how in the world can that be fair? What other product or service do I pay for all? Do I pay for anybody but myself? Do I pay for somebody else's food? Do I pay for somebody else's housing? Does anybody else pay for my food or my housing? No, in this world, every man buys what he consumes, except for in education and healthcare and a few select areas that the government has taken over and mandated that we redistribute wealth in these particular industries. So this assertion that I pay for all kids' school is absolutely absurd. Nobody pays for me to eat. Nobody pays for me to, for my cable, for my internet, for anything. Nobody paid half of this video camera that I bought. Everybody buys and sells for themselves. But yet in education, why not just have somebody come and rob me and beat me and take my money and go pay for their lunch? This is the, schoolyard bully beating me up and taking my lunch money. That's all this is. It's just been legalized. You talk about private schools supposedly have better, or if they do have better results. I need to check my time right here. If they do have better results, it's because they get, quote unquote, the cream of the crop. And that's not your quote. That's a phrase that I use to equate what you're saying here. They get the best students and they can determine who they take and reject certain others. But once again, I make that indictment on the public education system. Are you aware that highly disabled students are farmed out to private schools? And they pay those schools very high amounts of money, high above the student average. There was a story of one blind boy in New York that lived upstate, and he required, a lot of extra accommodation. The public school in his area wasn't able to do it. They sent him to a private school at the cost of $100,000 a year down in New York City. And only they could accommodate that child's needs. And we see this with emotionally disturbed children and other severe disabilities all the time. The public schools farm those out to the private schools. So it's not like we're taking the cream of the crop. My other question is, and I'm getting very low on time, so I may have to continue this, is the other issue is, do I want to do away with public schools or not? Ultimately, yes. But you were still wrong in the assertion that you made in that comment, because in the video that you commented in, I was not talking about eliminating public schools. I was talking about a system of choice with public schools included. Okay, so in the video you made that comment in, you were absolutely wrong. I was not proposing, I was discussing a proposal of choice with public schools included. All right? Ultimately, I think public schools, steal from one set of people and give to other set of people, and I'd like to see them done away with. But I would settle for, school choice among public schools and private schools. Whether they're better or not, okay, if you want information on that, I'm not going to do your research for you. I've read the study that you quote. I've read it extensively. You do not indicate that you have read any of the studies that I quote. So if you'd like to do that, you can go to cato.org or the Heritage Foundation, and if you think those organizations are biased, you may well be right. But they annotate their research very specifically, so you can even hunt down the additional sources and look at the sources that they quote and see if they're biased or if they're just making the information up, or maybe there's really something to what they're saying. So it's not a matter of whether they're better or not. I believe they are better, but it's a matter of choice. It's a matter of choice. All right, so I tried to deal with some of the issues there. 500 characters is not much, and it turns out that when you're discussing issues of this depth, 10 minutes is not much either. But I've tried to stick to the issues and try to explain my positions a little bit. A lot of your assertions I just don't believe hold up.